looking at our values. Looking at our values. Our first value, if you remember, is trust Jesus. Everything starts and finishes with Jesus. The whole Christian life, not just salvation, but eternity, everything is about Jesus. And then the second one is to be transformed. So be transformed, which it's not transform yourselves. We don't believe we can transform ourselves or change ourselves. But we do believe that God transforms us, and so we talked about being transformed, allowing Him to change us, love easier, live freer in Jesus. That's always a good life when you can do that. The third one, our third value, is love God above all. Love leads to obedience, so love God above all. And when we love Him, and again, to love Him means I must let Him love me. So in order for us to love, we need to learn how to receive love. We need to let God love us in the way that God loves us, in who He is. And that takes humility, it takes submission, it takes walking with Him, but allowing Him to define our relationship, not our works or behavior. Then our next one was choose community. We don't mature in isolation. It's easier to keep away from people. You can actually pretend to be holier if you're not actually talking to people, relating to people. But when you're in relationships, that's where our faith is tested. That's where we grow. We don't mature in isolation. Two more. Serve. It's not up to a few. We also believe that as we serve God, we honor Him. We think outside of ourselves. We look outside of ourselves. But we also, where my servant is, there I am. Where I am, there my servant will be. And so there's something about us drawing close to God in doing the things that He loves to do. And finally, before this week, it's live out your faith. Demonstrate the difference Jesus makes. And we talked about how this is when we really mature, when we don't just believe, but we act on our beliefs. We talked about this in the life group, but it's like I can teach you how to ride a bike. I could write to you how to ride a bike. I can show you a video on how to ride a bike. But until you actually ride a bike, you don't get it. And you also don't get the joy. You don't get the pain every once in a while, in the beginning especially, but you don't get the joy and the fulfillment of it. And so live out your faith. And so these are values that we believe. These are things that we want for each of us. This is what a disciple looks like. A disciple trusts God. A disciple loves God. A disciple lives out their faith. And so this is what we as a church are helping one another to grow into, to mature into. We want to help people soar in a relationship with Christ. That's what we talk about. And again, the fruit of the Spirit, the gifts of the Spirit, these are all relational. They're all meant to be lived out in relationships. So we want to do this together. Again, we don't mature in isolation. But here's the thing, before we get to our value for today, the longer we're in relationships, the closer we become, the more issues, the more weaknesses, the more accidental elbow in the gut, the more we see each other, the more we know, the more problems we might see. And since we love, since our hearts are to help, it's easy for us to want to fix, to want to change the other person. This is where our seventh value comes in. Now, someone pointed out to me, so don't try to fix people. You can't. And it's better to point them, to help them to trust Jesus. Someone pointed out to me how all of our other values are stated positively. And this value is stated negatively. So do this, but this one is don't do this. And it kind of comes off a little bit legalistic or whatever. So it may be better to say something like listen to people, help others to trust Jesus rather than fix them. We might need to change that. If somebody's got a better way of saying this than that, I'm all open. But since this is our value, and I'm not just going to willy-nilly change it, this is a value, and so until that, this kind of nails it. This kind of nails it, but in a bit of a negative sense. And as I wrote this sermon, I wondered, in a sense, I'm even wondering, gee, should this even be a value? Is this a value of our church? Is this more like a good advice or behavioral advice or whatever? But the thing is, our values highlight the actions we applaud. They highlight the actions that we want to help people to practice as a church. Plus, I catch myself in life group training and everything else telling people, don't try to fix people. I just see a natural tendency in good-hearted people to want to fix people. And the problem is, A, we can't, and B, it often backfires when we do. So parents of adults, not parents of children, you need to correct them, you need to help them, but parents of adults, how often have you tried to help your adult child? You know, by correcting them, by fixing the problem that you see, by telling them what they need to do. And even though you insist that, honey, I'm only trying to help, they don't receive it as help whatsoever. It doesn't feel like you're trying to help them. Husbands and wives, how often have you tried to help your spouse, you know, by correcting her? Any wives, you love to be corrected by your husband, or by trying to fix them, by telling them what they need to do. And again, even though you insist that you're only trying to help, you just need to hear this, honey. I'm only trying to help you. They resent your advice. Or they get upset, or they get hurt, or whatever. I feel like sometimes we're not just trying to fix the problem, we're trying to fix the person. And I think that's how it comes across at times. So it feels like law rather than grace. And whenever I feel like I'm being corrected, inspected, judged, even if it's not judgment. That's often how it comes across. That's often how it feels. And then we go into our defense modes and stuff. The bottom line is, whether it's your fault or my fault, I'm not changing, because it's really hard to receive this. Also in church, Elena was having coffee with a good friend. She started to share that she was feeling distant from God, and she was talking and just sharing, you know, that, yeah, I'm not feeling, I'm not seeing, I'm not hearing. And then Danielle interrupted and said, gosh, what you need to do is start getting up at 5:30 in the morning and having your quiet time. That's what I do. That's what fixed it. That's what helps. And Elena nodded, all right, yeah. I should probably do that. Danielle felt great, solved the problem, helped a friend, you know. But Elena had already been praying. Besides, she's not a morning person. She doesn't like to get up in the morning. So she politely obliged, yet she felt more guilt, more shame, and she felt even further away from God than she did before she shared. Instead of active listening, instead of caring, it's easy to jump into problem-solving mode for us, which often ignores the heart and focuses on the behavior. So it ignores the person and focuses on what they're doing. Now, some may argue, yeah, but I am a problem solver. That's what I do. I'm good at it, you know. And shouldn't they be able to hear my advice? What's wrong with helping people, you know? Another might say, well, I don't think I try to fix people. I just try to help them. You know, we don't see this. When Sue shared her struggle with loneliness, her small group bombarded her with advice. Join a club. Get a cat. Use that time to pray. Or download a Tinder app for Christians. Going into problem-solving mode, they ignored her deeper issue. Plus, she already had 5 cats. She didn't feel heard. She didn't feel like she was heard at all. And after a few minutes, you know what she felt like? She felt like she was their project. She felt like she was their project. And she actually felt lonelier that night than she had all week long. when devastation and tragedy struck Job's family, look at his first response, his immediate response. Then Job arose, tore his robe, shaved his head, fell to the ground. Okay? So he tore his robe. He is in agony. His family is dead, destroyed, homes, massive suffering and loss. Tears his clothes, which was just a sign of incredible pain and suffering. What was it? Shaved his head. Kind of like Ken Michna. I don't know if you know this. Man, that beautiful beard is gone. Shaved his head, fell to the ground, and worshipped. Isn't that amazing? He didn't deny the pain. He didn't deny. He entered into it fully, but he worshiped God. Then the worst week of his life got even worse. He was plagued with physical pain and suffering. Incredible, intense pain, gross pain, little worms popping out and everything. And his wife and friends attempted to fix his suffering, okay? They attempted to fix his suffering. They came from a place of concern. They cared for him. They traveled from afar as friends and stuff. But their efforts only added to his suffering, his distress. First of all, his wife said, "Why do you still act the way you do? Just curse God and die. You don't have to hold on to your presumed holiness. Just curse God and die." Now, no doubt about it, his wife is herself grieving and incredibly upset. But heeding her advice would have only aggravated, exacerbated the situation, and would have robbed him of his only hope. His only hope was God. And there's no other hope. And he turns to God, and she's like, "No, curse God and die." I'm not saying we all have bad advice, but Job's wife had bad advice. And then Job's friends come. You think it was a bad day already, then Job's friends come. They come with the best of intentions, but rather than actively listening to Job's anguish, rather than bearing his burdens with him, rather than comforting him and all that, they added to his burden, again, by advising him, by attempting to solve his problems, by attempting to fix his suffering. You read this, Eliphaz the Temanite, he answered, he came all the way from Teman, and he answered, "If one ventures a word with you, will you become impatient?" And I was okay, so he lost his family. He's aching in just agony. And now this guy is asking, "Hey, if I wanted to speak to you, will you become impatient?" But then he kind of goes on like, "Oh, it doesn't matter. You probably will be impatient, but who can refrain from speaking? How can I not talk? I've got something to say. You need to hear it." One by one, Job's friends told him what to do. At first they tried to figure out what his problem was. Why is this happening? If you ever ask that question, why is this happening? When you tell somebody, "Oh, I wonder what's happening," and they're trying to fix it, but they're trying, we're good at this. If we can figure out why this is happening, then we can gain what? Control. We can fix it. We can gain control as long as we can identify what the problem is, figure it all out. They had no idea. We had to be told by God why this was happening. You'd have never guessed why this was happening. But their thing is, maybe it's because you're not, Job, you might be suffering because you're not as holy as you think you are. You talk a good talk, but your life, you must have done something wrong. You must have been bad, because this only happens to bad people. Pretty much, you deserve it. That's what he's hearing. And after they talk, Job says, "For the despairing man," and this is awesome advice to us. If somebody shares it, "For the despairing man, there should be kindness from his friend, so that he does not forsake the fear of the Almighty." What incredible insight. Job didn't ask for their advice. What did he need? He needed them to come and sit beside him.
Love and comfort.
Love him. Comfort him. Care for him. To weep with those who weep. Type of a thing. That's what we're called. That's a community of grace rather than a community of fixing. Maybe to remind him, because he says not to forsake the fear of the Almighty, maybe he needed someone to come around and remind him of the unwavering love and faithfulness and goodness of Jesus Christ. He needed a grace community. In Romans, be devoted to one another in brotherly love. This is what we need. I'm going through something. I'm sharing something. Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Give preference to one another in honor. Let that person, validate and honor them. And not lagging in diligence, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord. Rejoicing in hope. Persevering in tribulation. Devoted to prayer. Contributing to the needs of the saints. Practicing hospitality. Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. This is a picture of a grace community. This is a picture of how I often see our church interact with people. This is we had a leadership meeting yesterday with some people, some of the leadership. This is what they want to see and what they want to expand upon as a church. And this type thing, this allows sins to be dealt with. This allows weaknesses to be shared. For the person to be heard, the person to be loved, understood, entered into. To hear about God's grace, to be brought closer to God. Not trying to fix it, but moving closer to God and His grace. Because when I am closer to God, when I'm able to trust God, that is when I live my best. Even in hurt, even in suffering. You can't fix my hurt. You can't fix my suffering. But you can help me to trust God. You can help me to find comfort. And that's what Job's asking for. That's what we want to offer. This is why this is a value in our church. So we can miss the deeper heart issue when we focus on the problem, when we focus on the behavior, when we try to find solutions, right? But the heart, this is where God works. In our heart, this is what He wants to touch in you. Each of you, this is often, we go through these things to get to a place where God can speak to our heart. And then we open it up to others, and they tell us, they divert us from God's heart and from healing. And they try to fix this, fix us. And we can sometimes do that because we love and we want to help people. Listen, we can train certain behaviors. And that's why I don't want the sermon. I don't want the sermon to be training you certain behaviors. But we can train certain behaviors, but godly transformation begins in the heart. Not in those. So we can hear problems. We can offer easy solutions. Get up 30 minutes earlier and pray. Just start being nicer. Just start being better. Just count to 10 and don't get angry. I don't think we should presume that anybody can master their bad behavior. Okay? Can anybody master their bad behavior? And we might be tempted to think they can. But if, and I've mentioned this before, but if you can master your behavior, then if you've been a Christian for 10 years or longer, you should be perfect. If you can master your behavior. Don't think, listen, we are a church that values God's glory, values God's grace, but to value God's glory and to value God's grace means we need to minimize human effort, human goodness, all that. If we start, to the degree we think you can fix this, you can control this, you can change this, then you don't need this. You don't need God. He is the one who can do all. With God, all things are impossible. With man, that is not possible. And so we believe that. We want to honor that as a church. That's a grace community. We don't put it on you to fix yourself or to change. We put it on God. So our biggest thing is not to help you figure out how to do it. Our biggest thing is to help you connect to the heart of God. That's when you change. People don't need to be fixed. Some need to vent and be listened to and heard. But you know what? We don't need to be fixed. You know what we often need? The person who's really doing making bad choices, poor behavior, they don't need to be fixed. They need to be healed. They need to be healed. They need to be loved. They need to be heard and known. They need to be able to express themselves, and they need to be able to trust. That's a really big, when you're hurt, when you're wounded, and some of the times we're just talking about people who just shared something. Other times we're talking about people who are deeply wounded and hurt, but they don't need you to tell them what to do. They've tried a million times and they feel like crap because they can't do it. But if they are wounded, if they are hurt, they need to be able to trust. When they find somebody that they can trust, their whole world opens up to them. We want to be people that you can trust. Jesus didn't tell Zacchaeus, the woman at the well, the demoniac living in the tombs, Matthew, Peter, Paul. He didn't tell anybody how to fix themselves. He called them to trust him, right? He gave them every reason in the world to hope in him, to follow him. He encouraged us to love. Listen, we might say, hold your breath, or count to 10, and let go of your anger. Again, if I do that, what does that do for me? Okay, it stops me from being a little angry maybe in the moment. It might just even give me time enough to cool down. But if all I'm doing is learning how to breathe, amen, that's awesome. Learn to breathe. But there's something deeper going on. Jesus didn't give us little things. That's the thing about law. Law gives you a little thing that you have a little bit of control over so you can feel good about yourself. Jesus says, love God with all that you are. All your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength. Jesus says, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. Jesus is giving us things that we cannot possibly do without him. He's giving us things that draw us to his grace so that we can, live this Christian life with him at the center rather than me just having a few things that I can pretty much handle on my own. So this is a really important, even when I was writing this and thinking about this, it's like, okay, I'm still not convinced. I'm just even in the bathroom, looking at myself in the mirror, not talking to myself, not, you're a good guy, you're not anything like that. But just I was washing my hands, and I was like, Lord, I am weak today. I'm not thrilled with this sermon. I'm not thrilled with the message. I'm just feeling weak today. And our band, got 3 guys who are out of the band. Our band is kind of weak today. But when we were weak, you were strong. And so I got strength in that. I got courage in that. And that's, so with Jesus, that's what he's doing. It's in his grace, in our weakness, when we can be honest about it. We can walk with him, we can heal, we can mature. I don't know if I need to go through all this. There is one thing I wanted you to see. Martha and Mary. So we've talked about Martha and Mary for a few times already in this series. So why do Martha and Mary keep coming up? But they're on our minds, so why stop now? When Jesus first visited Martha and Mary, Martha was busy. We all know the story. Most of us know the story. She was busy preparing while Mary sat at Jesus' feet. And Martha, she tried to what? We're talking about fixing people. She tried to fix Mary. Okay? So she asked Jesus to tell her to help me. I don't think I have that up here. Okay, later, so she's basically telling him to have her help me, and Jesus says, no, Martha, she's the one who made the right choice. Then later, when Lazarus gets sick and dies, Martha tries to fix Jesus. Look at this. Martha therefore went, and when she heard that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary stayed at the house. But now notice Jesus' awesome response. Oh no, actually this is, and Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. I might be reading into it to say that she tried to fix him. But I do think she's basically saying you should have come earlier. If you had come earlier, my brother would still be living. Lazarus wouldn't be dead. So first she tries to fix her sister, and then she tries to fix Jesus. This is where I'm going with this. Soon after Mary came, remember she stayed behind, then she came to where Jesus was. And therefore when Mary came to where Jesus was, she saw him and fell at his feet, saying to him, same thing, right? Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Same as Martha. But here's Jesus' response, verse 33. When Jesus Therefore, when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. And he said, "Where have you laid him?" And they said to him, "Lord, come and see." And verse 35, Jesus wept. Jesus wept. And so the Jews were saying, "See how he loved him." I just want to point out, this is our God. This is the heart of our God, right? He's deeply touched by her grief, her expression of emotion. It touched his heart. Even though he's about to raise Lazarus from the dead, he's minutes away from this big, huge miracle, but Jesus didn't correct her for crying. He didn't correct her for doubting. He didn't correct her for how she felt. He didn't tell her what she should do. He listened to her. He saw her tears. He felt her loss, right? He felt her loss. And he fully entered into her grief with her. This is our God. This is our model. Jesus, of course, did act to solve the problem. You know, he knew he was going to do that. But two things. He's God. We're not. That's just what he does. That's who he is. Praise God for that. But then second, he didn't act until he fully understood. He didn't act until he fully what is it? Empathized. Empathized. Good thing I don't do this for a living. And he loved well. So in Matthew 11:28, he models this again. Jesus doesn't try to solve people's problems by telling them what to do. He merely invites those with burdens to bring them to him. Matthew 11:28. Now, come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Verse 29. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart. You will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So here's when we try to fix, and this is just an automatic thing for some of us because we love, but when we try to fix, not to understand someone, we miss something. When someone risks vulnerability with us, if someone risks vulnerability with you, they share where they're at, or you're in a group and someone shares, may we close our mouths and open our hearts. Close our mouths and open our hearts. Give them attention. Validate their experience. Maybe if you're good at this, or if something comes up, ask an open-ended question to help them express what's really going on, to help them explore deeper issues. But then also help them to see, help them to hear, help them to receive. Okay? The unwavering love and the grace of God. Help them to see that. That's the vision you want to cast. That's the vision you want to model. It is for them to see us. So Jesus wept. He showed us God. Here he invites them to join his yoke with him and stuff. But telling them what to do makes their behavior the focus and puts it on them to be able to do it. Whereas when we help others to trust Jesus, we shift the focus away from their behavior, away from the thing that they're doing wrong, and we put their focus on Jesus Christ and his unlimited power, unlimited ability, and unlimited love. That's a really good thing. Okay. Sometimes I never have a story. I think I have a few stories here. I got one more. And I'm debating on whether it's overkill or whether it's icing on the cake. Let me end with a story about three friends, Sarah, Emily, and Michael, who often gather at their favorite coffee shop just to catch up on life, you know. Christians that go to the same church, they want to meet together. One morning last week, Sarah took a deep breath, confided in them about her struggles with anxiety, with feeling overwhelmed, by the constant worries that plagued her mind. She was going through things. Things weren't working out. She was getting all worked up and anxious and feeling overwhelmed. And Sarah hoped, of course, that her friends would understand and comfort her and listen and be there so she could just vent and, deal with it. But as she shared her innermost thoughts, Michael, of course, eager to help, immediately jumped in and said, Sarah, and hopefully this isn't too much like the first story, but Sarah, you just need to pray. You just need to trust God. He'll take away your anxiety. He promises to take away your anxiety. And while Michael meant well, and this is what many of us would do, his response left her feeling dismissed. He totally oversimplified the struggle and just made it a simple doink. Do this over. Move on. She regretted saying anything. Emily, on the other hand, leaned in closer. Her eyes filled with empathy. She said something like, Sarah, thank you for being older with us. And then she asked, how has this been affecting you? So she gave her room to share how it's affecting her. Then after Sarah said how it's affecting her, Emily asked, has anything in particular helped you? Through this? Anything helping you to cope? And then she asked if it was okay. A principle of permission that we talk about sometimes. To ask if it's okay to share something that Jesus said. That might bless her, might comfort her. And Sarah gave her permission. I think this is huge. We often presume permission. And sometimes it's hard to ask. Do you mind if I say this? Or do you mind? But this really shouldn't be hard. But sometimes, man, if you're not a good body reader, because people let you know. I mean, now, I have to just say, sometimes I stand like this when I'm talking to people. Don't ever take that bad. But I know when they say read body language, this always means shut up, I don't want to hear from you. But this means, man, I'm in. My back is kind of tight normally, so I'm in. Talk to me. So I need to be aware of that. But if you can't read body language often, you don't recognize that person is not giving you permission. I don't want to hear from you. And others can see it on their face or whatever, but you're so excited to help them that you're going to share it. She asked for permission. She wanted to hear what Jesus had to say. So she didn't have it memorized or anything, but she told her that Jesus understands. And as much as God cares about the birds, as a pastor, he cares about the birds, and he cares about the flowers and the bees, so he makes the flowers bloom, and he feeds the birds, and all I know is he cares so much more for you than he does those birds, or those flowers, or those bees. And Jesus wants you and invites you even now, just cast your cares on him, your anxieties upon him. And she also, and here's a big thing, I know this is hard. I know this is hard. I think that's sometimes when people don't hear, when they just hear, hey, just do this, do this, do this, they don't hear, I know this is hard. She let her know that she knows. And then she asked and she shared a passage, and she did find this, and I like this passage, I think this is good. But this is a passage where she found solace in her feelings, and the passage is, do not fear. This is God speaking. For I am with you. Do not anxiously look about you, for I am your God. In fact, I'll just say this, let's just start over again. For any of you who are needing to hear this, I think we all do, but for those of us who are dealing with fears, emotions, anxieties, worries, do not fear, for I am with you. And it's not just a command. Hey, don't fear, I'm with you. But it's, no, guys, I'm with you. Look to me, trust me right now. I am with you, the all-powerful one. Do not anxiously look about you. Just look at me, for I am your God, and I will strengthen you. You need to hear that again. I will strengthen you. Surely I will help you, and I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. She shared how this reminds her that God is always present with her, ready to help, strengthen, and support us. Afterwards, the three of them hugged. She was glad she shared. She didn't feel judged, and she felt closer to God than she had in an awful long time.